For the next subfunction, we're going to look at our master handle behavior and whether we should set it as an intensity master or a proportional master. So I'm going to say clear sneak enter. That'll get rid of all the changes that I built with my last example. And I'm going to say group 5 full. I'm going to tilt those up on stage. Great. And I'm going to say record sub 10 enter and load that to my fader. So let's get rid of those manual values by clear sneak enter. And so when I recorded that fader, I recorded not only the intensity of those channels, but also the non-intensity parameters. And by default, my handle is going to be proportional, which means that as I move up, I'm proportionally moving all of the parameters. So intensity is fading between 0 and full as I move up the handle, but my tilt values are also going from their home values to their stored values as I move up. So what we end up with as we move this handle is a live move, and maybe that's not something that we want. We can change that master property to be an intensity master, and that will only control the intensity. The bump button will be used to preset all of the non-intensity parameters. So let's say sub 10, properties, and I'm going to change my master from proportional to intensity. So while the fader is still down, I'm going to hit my bump button, and you'll notice that my non-intensity parameters mark to the location that's stored in that sub. Now as I bring up my fader, it's going to bring up only the intensities, and those channels will be exactly where I wanted them on stage. With the fader down, I can tap my bump button, and that's going to let those channels go back to what they were doing before the sub took control of them. Let's do an example with LED color, because this can also prove difficult. I'm going to say group 20, and I'm going to put them at full. That'll bring up my cyc lights. And I want to make them blue, so I'm just going to go ahead and minimize the color for all the other parameters. That looks good. And I want to record that to sub 11, so I'm going to go ahead and say record sub 11, enter. I'm going to load that to a fader over here. And then to get rid of that manual information, I'm going to go ahead and say clear sneak enter. That'll sneak out those values for me. And as soon as that's done, I'm going to bring up the fader, and you'll notice that my intensity is fading up proportionally, as we expect on a proportional sub. But my parameters that are stored at 0 are actually fading from full down to 0 as we travel up. And that's because LED parameters home at full. So you can see as we come back up, we'll go through some mixed white area before we travel all the way up to our full saturate blue. And that's generally not something that I want. So I'm going to bring that sub back down. I can say sub 11 properties. In my properties area, I can change the master fader behavior from proportional to intensity master. Now that I've done that, I can hit the bump button on my sub 11, and you'll notice when I do that, it marks the non-intensity parameters, so that as I bring my fader up, it's only dealing with the intensity, and I have my blue all the way from top to bottom. You'll also notice that when I bring my fader down, it holds those parameters, so I need to hit my bump button again to unmark those. When you're set to an intensity master, the board, upon the sub moving above 0%, will try and mark those parameters for you, and that works pretty well with LEDs. So I can travel that all the way back up and all the way down without having to hit bump to mark it. But it still holds my parameters at the bottom, and I have to unmark those. There's another property that I can adjust, and you can see I still have my properties up for sub 11. I can hit my unmark at 0, and with that enabled, it's going to allow the sub to mark those non-intensity parameters as soon as I start moving the fader. I can travel all the way up, and as I come back down, as soon as I hit 0, it's going to release those non-intensity parameters back to their home values.